Okay. So I've run into a small problem with verifiable theory. Okay.
Ah,
Um, I still like it, but I got to tell you what the confusion is. Here, let me
okay.
share my screen. Okay. So I had this post. Um, well, I'll find it indirectly. That was based on I had this post based on that screen I had before, this thing,
Ah,
this picture. Okay. And this is actually what's interesting so far is it's had a good number of hits. It's not gone viral, but it's had over 2,000, which is pretty good. And there's not one defense or defense of Scrum or attack of this because I think it's kind of irrefutable. Um,
ah,
but
uh-huh.
then I got a response, and I actually like Cliff Berg stuff, but he claims that he loved this comment because the no verifiable theory, because that's what they do in um, in Agile too. I don't need to show you what he said, but then he points to something, says, so I said, give me some examples because I had doubted that he was accurate in this. So I wanted to know what he said. And I'm not that familiar with Cliff's work, but I actually like what Cliff says in general. Okay. So I looked at what he said, and he gave me two sites, and we don't have to go through what this is, but I looked at the two sites he talked about and why constructive agility works and all this. And what he ends up showing is theory that I suppose you could verify if you think about it, like Deming's holding that management's responsible for the system and systems will defeat good people and all that. Well, that is verifiable theory, only it takes a very long time to verify it. And the other thing is those aren't first principles. So there actually are two kinds of theory here. And I've been meaning um, first principles. Okay. And first
Hmm.
principles are immediately verifiable based on your past experience. Whereas what he's talking about is more of like theory X, theory Y, stuff like that, that you can look at and see what makes sense. And that's good stuff. But there's a difference here. So I've been wondering, what we really mean, or what I mean anyway, is verifiable first principles. And maybe I need to use that phrase for what I'm talking about. Verifiable first principles, because then it's not just a theory, but you can see what it is. And I wondered what we should call these, given that yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can go out and verify and it's good theory, but it's not first principles. And I'm talking about first principles. So
Then
what are your
maybe you
thoughts?
should
It's for
say,
everybody, but Susan had brought the term up, so that's why I asked
yeah,
her
then
first.
maybe it should be verifiable first principles. It has the advantages of not using that hot button term theory.
Yeah. And and then we could talk about, yeah, that's a good point too. Verifiable first principles. And then we could talk about verifiable theory a broader scope. But the reason first principles we like is because they can be done quickly. Um, Yeah. Okay. So just to recap, because some of you came in just a little later, we went from first principle we went from theory to verifiable theory. And then the issue is some people, I actually mean the more concise, I can look at it from my own experience and see whether it's true or not. Whereas a lot of the stuff, like Cliff Berg was talking about in Agile too, it's verifiable, but probably not verifiable just from your past experience fully. A little bit, you could verify it from past experience to see some things, but they're also not first principles. They're rather a theory of management, how to do it effectively. And it's a good theory of management, but it's different. So I want to make a distinction. I know I tend to over distinguish things, but I think in this case it's important. So I'm just throwing this open as a couple minute conversation before I get into the meat of today. So. Any thoughts or questions? I mean, my shift is going to be to call this. Well, actually, they don't have any verifiable theory, but we use first principles. So actually, I can use this here.
And maybe that title, what you base your approach on, is important in the sense that people tend to not think about what they're basing things on.
Yeah,
Maybe slightly change that to something more that resonates better. But again, yesterday as well in the meeting, nobody really, I mean, most people just acknowledged that you were talking about things that did resonate.
yeah, yeah. I think for in this use, this is okay. Verifiable theory, basically, there are two kinds of verifiable theory we're talking about. One is first principles, and the other one is like theories of management, theories of how people behave that you can verify on your own experience. And that's all. Maybe verifiable theory as an umbrella is okay. And then just be clear that Amplio is providing first principles and verifiable theory. And then the first principles become easier to okay, well, I'll start with those because that's easy and quick start. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. I didn't want to take a lot of time on this. I just wanted to get clear in my head. So here's what I do want to do. And this is actually really helpful for me in terms of running this workshop. In that I believe that from now on, when we do like these sessions on Wednesday, we're going to take one topic and deal with a whole hour. I've been going back through some of the videos, and I know what I did. I think I was kind of trying to show breadth, so I kind of sometimes would blend two, three topics. This topic's going to be why pattern languages are better than hybrid. And what prompted this is two things. First of all, I've been thinking about this like forever. I've always thought hybrids are tentative partial solutions that people think are the answer, but they're not. They're not a bad step. They're not a bad step, but they're not really the right way to do things. They could be an interim step. And then what also prompted it is I see people are seem to be continuously talking about hybrids as the next generation. And I'm like, to me, they're already old school. So this is what I want to talk about today. And I'll I'll present it. This is in the Amplio Foundations. This is some mindset thing. And when I finish the foundations of these five, I need a new graph actually, because I just pulled this one in. I had one that started with patterns. I had one, this is the third in a sense of the patterns talk. This is the new series that I started with what a pattern was, and I started with um, how patterns languages can provide the overall reach. Then I did yesterday's, which was how this verifiable theory can help us understand, and patterns can give us a way to manage it. This is the third in the step. And then this creates the context for then presenting the Scrum Quick Start with Amplio, which is the next one I'm going to do, because I think that's important. So let's just go through this. And I've done this in kind of I want to talk about each step. Okay, so this isn't just a pure presentation, interrupt me, jump in, whatever. But the first thing I looked at is that when you use a framework, and I'll just start with Scrum because it's well known and it's usually when people use hybrids, it's always one of the ones in there. It's usually Scrum and Kanban are the two. What triggered this actually, somebody wrote this insane article this morning on that Scrumban was a hybrid of Scrum and Kanban, which it totally isn't. I mean, this person's clearly never read Corey's book. Scrumban is a means to go from Scrum to Kanban. It was always a transition model. That's why he wrote it. If you think I have stuff about Scrum, I'm an amateur compared to Corey. I mean, seriously, I don't know anybody who likes Scrum could read that book. He's always been way worse than me. I love Corey. I love he said what he said, but it's like, oh my God, this guy is really blunt. It's like he's talking to an ex-wife or something. I mean, it's just really horrible. Um, and it was only after 2 or 3 years that it was out that I realized that some people could go and start with Scrumban, then to transition to Kanban, and then decide when they're halfway through the transition, when they've adopted the lean thinking, when they've adopted the Kanban boards, when they've really got all the Kanban model, but they haven't made the last jump to go to a pure flow model, that they might want to just decide to stick with the sprints, but using Kanban thinking. Or maybe they even want to start there. I got that idea because it seemed to apply. And I was hesitant to talk about it because it wasn't what Corey's intention was. I knew Corey's in Seattle, and we would used to chat. One of my favorite anecdotes with Corey's normally very well-mannered. He's a very smart guy. He got the nickname the professor because he's also a very deep thinker. And I remember one time we were talking about Scrum versus Kanban, and we were at a coffee shop. We were sitting at the bar, and he pounded his fist on the coffee shop. It was a little bit of a disturbance. Like, he said, there is no Kanban, there is no Scrum, there is only Lean. I can still remember this. And his point was Scrum and Scrumban and Kanban were just manifestations of what really was important. This was like back 2008, 2009. So I asked him, I said, not then, I think, but later, I said, Corey, would it be okay if people use Scrumban to get halfway there and then decided that's what they were going to use? So Scrumban could be an intermediate step. And he said, sure, no problem. So Scrumban is not a hybrid. It's maybe a partial transition to Kanban, but it's not blending the two. It's totally Kanban model. I'll probably need to make a picture of that. I just write that down. That would be helpful. It's Kanban practice of thinking. And you've just stopped halfway. I didn't have time to respond that this morning, except to just say this wasn't good thinking, but I'll write that. So anyway, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking hybrids. People are jumping into hybrids, but the thing with frameworks is they're still only tacitly based on first principles. You can look at Scrum. This is something I suggested in 2007, I think it was, and got thrown off the Scrum board for having the audacity to say this. And it's there. There is a connection. You can see why Scrum stuff works when it's applicable. And in fact, maybe that's a call out. I'm going to do what I did before. And you can add other things for me to put in. Yes.
What are those numbers? 20, 30,
Oh, yeah.
10?
Sorry. Those are about the number of them. I'm not sure I should have put them in at this point. I probably shouldn't. I'll take them out at this point. They're just distracting. They come into relevance later, and I worked from the back forward on this. Hang on a second. Let me get this done now. And then I'll take those out because they're confusing at this point. Okay. Hang on.
And also mention that, not many people really think about what framework they're using. So sometimes they don't even think, they don't mind if it's a middle step Scrum band or
That's right.
the final one. So
It's how we do things around here.
Yeah, no, it's not
attitude.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I didn't make it clear what I meant. Because you're right, you're absolutely right, and that's not quite what I meant. So let me explain. Let me do two things here. First of all, I'm going to take these out. What these are later, I'm going to get to the number of things managed. So at the end, I put them in, and then I put them in here, but they shouldn't be here. Okay. What I mentioned by that comment about they're in the middle. You're right. They don't really care what they call it. Okay, I'm gonna do a now let me make sure I can make it clear here. Oh, that would be good. Okay, I'm gonna make it clear in another slide or two. Okay, I actually think I don't need a separate slide. I can make it clear here. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Okay, and I will get to the numbers. Okay. So a hybrid of the two provide more choice. So when you add Kanban to it, this is good. So some problems better based on context. Each one have different things. Or, Kanban is not universally better than Scrum. Scrum is not universally better than Kanban. They each have some advantage. They both are based on some level of first principles and other thought. I'm not sure I should say first principles down here, but you get what I mean. Something like, in fact, instead of first principles, this would be better to say flow lean theory of constraints. First principles is a way of explaining that. Okay, cool. Yeah, much better. Okay, but hang on. This is I'm one step ahead of me. I want to go back to answer your question, Sergio. Or not your question, your observation. It's a little different. Okay, so okay, so this is really the case. Um, let me put these thoughts out here. Okay. So what I mean here is you have kind of like this. So if you have Scrum and you have Kanban and you have Scrum's foundations, and Kanban, I want to use a different shape, but I haven't got to that yet. And you have Kanban's foundations, then what you're doing as you're moving from here to here is you're throwing away you're throwing away this and now using this. So as you get in the middle, you start with you make this switch immediately. So whereas a hybrid is not even worrying about this, not even thinking about this. So I can make this a better picture, but you get the idea, I guess. You know, that Scrum, when you do Scrumban, you're basically the step one. Okay. Step one, adopt Kanban mindset. Step two, start substituting Kanban practices for Scrums. Step three, get be doing Kanban for all intents and purposes.
Step two wouldn't be substituting Scrum practices for Kanbans.
This is how you, this is basically what Scrumban is. So I'm not sure I understand in fact, I know I'm not sure I understand your question, Sergio. Say it again.
Just step number 2, wouldn't it be that you start substituting Scrum for Kanban?
Oh, yeah, duh. Yes. Defective coffee. What can I say?
Well, is it that
No, you
you,
could,
No,
I think
so
you were
let me
right the
put it
first
this way.
time.
Scrum's practices with Kanban's practices. That's clear. English is useful. Okay, is that clear now?
Because you're replacing Scrum with Kanban, right?
That's right. So
yes.
replace, how about if I say replace? But I mean, this is more accurate. The beauty of Kanban is you can do it in a Kaizen manner because you know each step's an improvement. Okay, that's close enough. I can make a better picture later. Is this clear?
And doesn't it happen the other way around, that any team or group of people start using the Kanban boards and then they start using Scrum? That doesn't happen very often?
I don't see it going backwards. No,
Okay.
I'm not. Yeah. So this can look like a hybrid. Um, okay. So what this would look like is we get this, talk about this, do this, then do that. Okay, it may look like a hybrid, shouldn't be. Okay, good. Okay, is this clear? Does this make sense? Okay.
So Al, sorry, just one
No, no,
question.
no, don't be sorry.
On the left, I didn't get what the difference was between, because I'm mobile here and I
That's
missed
all
it.
right.
So can you walk through the left part again, why you're doing that?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go through the thing here. So what I've got is I'm saying using a framework. Oh, didn't get rid of it. Thought I got rid of those. Okay, forget the numbers right now. So when we use a framework, basically there are some problems solved. Scrum practices are chosen on the Scrum mindset and they solve certain problems. And then people real there, but I'm acknowledging that there is a theory. Scrum is a partial implementation of flow, lean, and the theory of constraints. Um, it's not explicitly stated and sometimes even denied. So it's not mentioned, but you can discern the connections. So that's like a framework. Um, hang on, this is something we mentioned yesterday. Let's add it. See, I love this new way of doing these. Our focus is on the framework, not the. Okay, does that make it a little better? for the
Yes.
start. Okay. Then what I'm saying after this is I'm noticing. Here, let me actually put it in presentation mode. Then what I'm saying, there are alternative approaches. You can use Kanban based on the Kanban mindset. The connection is Kanban explains it better. I shouldn't say connection partially explained. Now there's another difference here. Scrum has its own adoption method, and Kanban has a different adoption method. Um, Kanban method was about adopting with Kaizen only. Kanban, as I saw it, lean Kanban was you could go either way. So actually, let me say that. Oops, what did I just do?
So your point of doing this is to contextualize more where people are, to show them that there's a bunch of stuff they don't know is related to what they're doing, and that makes it easier to move from where they are to Amplio, or is
No, I'm
there
not.
some other motivation?
At this point, I'm just trying to explain what a hybrid is. So
Okay.
a hybrid gives you choices, you know, gives you sets of choices. And while becoming, well, this is now where maybe I shouldn't be bringing this up. Provides choices. I don't need to say this at this point. All I'm trying to say is that they give you better choice and they have different adoption methods, can blend the adoption methods as well. I'm intentionally mixing languages. Most people know what Kaizen is, but they don't know what Kakaku is. Okay, so I'm not sure I'm addressing your issue, Andrew, which means I don't think I know your issue. All I'm trying to do
Well,
here is explain what hybrid is, that it gives you some more choices. That's all good.
okay. So I guess I missed the beginning, and so I was kind of in the middle, and that's probably
Yeah,
my
that's
fault.
fine. That's fine. No, it's good. It's good to make it clarity what I'm trying to do. It wasn't clear. And then I'm saying Scrum Bond because some people misinterpret it. I'm having this aside right here, and I'll maybe make a better picture.
So you're just walking through various hybrids and how those hybrids
I'm
can come to
trying,
be.
yes, I'm trying to explain what the current thinking is on these because it's wrong. It's weak. Instead of saying wrong, I'm gonna start using the term weak sometimes. It's weak. It's weak sauce. So that's all I'm trying to do is weak sauce. Okay. This is the thinking. Okay, so let's put it back in. And then I say Scrum Bond's not a hybrid. I'm just trying to say, okay, here's where we are, folks. This is where we are. Okay. Okay. Now this is where, yeah, this is good. This is where I need the numbers. So hang on. So here I've got this. I don't have any numbers and they're all good. And now here I'm going to say, I'm trying to say, let's take a look at the number of things we have. There are about 30 problems we solved doing this. I'm just going to put many. Who knows how many concepts there are here. Okay. So, actually, I wonder if I shouldn't have this as two things, one with numbers and one without. So this is kind of the enemy. This is, by the way, a technique to do animation by slide instead of by animation. I am doing a combination of things. I discovered that when I do a heavy animation, I could do all this in one slide. But what you end up with, if you make a mistake, it's, oh my God, what have I done? Electrons are cheap. In fact, I doubt it even shows up on my bill, so I don't really care. I'm being facetious. Um, so I talk about this. So now we're saying, what if we come up with a team level pattern language? Now remember, I can do an aside in a blog, but I've already talked about patterns. This is like going to be something in the um, in the foundation series. And by the way, I realized something very powerful because what we're doing in the ACE program is more than I've just got this collection Amplo. And that's why this is a real content session here. You've got to understand what patterns are, pattern languages, and why hybrids are a step in the right direction, but they still leave you anchored to what you're coming from, and they don't go down into the theory of it. So what you have here is basically now we're saying that we've converted this to factors for effective value streams. Actually, I guess we've in a sense really converted this to first principles and factors for effective value streams.
Amplio and patterns and all that.
Well, I'm saying that taking flow lean theory constraints, this is first principles and factors for effective value streams. That's basically what I
Right,
spent a lot of time on.
but I guess what I'm saying is that most people who use Scrum and maybe even people who use Kanban have no idea that flow lean and theory of
That's right.
constraints is even applicable to. So you're highlighting that, okay, you think these things are isolated, but in fact, what I've done is I've taken this common foundation and I've taken certain parts of it and I've made them principles.
Yeah, now be clear here. I am not
Giving
talking about presenting this at this level of detail to somebody who's never seen anything else. We've been talking about this. This is part of the Amplio community of practice. We had a session, excuse me, that's not it. We had a session earlier right here, okay? So they've gone through all this. This is who I'm talking to. So you're right. Most people don't know this. And it's good you say that because it reminds me when I write a blog about this, I have to be very clear that this material here is intended for a slightly advanced audience. They at least have been exposed to what a pattern is and what a pattern language is. How to explain all this to somebody else is unclear. I'm actually writing a blog, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to say the essence of this without, with a little bit of explanation. But a quick explanation is what a pattern is. It's organized. Patterns are organized. Well, so I need a little bit of explanation of four things here. I'll just put a note. There are four concepts here. There's the notion of first principles. There's the notion of factors for effective value streams. There's a notion of patterns and pattern languages. And yeah, there's going to be a question as how I can do that quickly. But you guys know it. This is for you. I'm not doing this for the public. I'm doing this for you. And I think it's something the public might get interested in. And maybe they don't totally understand it. That's okay. They should see there's an alternative way. And I think without knowing the mechanics of this or what a pattern, without understanding the mechanics of these, I think I can show that. That's really what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay. So yeah, I didn't actually say that. I think partly because I'm not sure I was totally clear, but this is where I'm trying to go. Okay, so now let's look at what happens, because now something happens that's very interesting. And this is something I have said many times, and it's very germane. This is one of the things that astounds me. If a Martian came down and could understand English and observed what Scrum people say, they would think, oh, these guys don't care about people. They've designed the process for people to figure stuff out, and they don't attend to how people learn. They don't attend to how people will react to things. They don't attend to cognitive overload, and they don't attend to what happens when you give them a simplistic system. I mean, that's true what I just said. It absolutely ignores all this stuff. That's amazing. I'm not ignoring all this stuff. You've got to avoid cognitive overload. One of the reasons you're doing this is to avoid cognitive overload. Okay. And that's what I want to point out here. Now the numbers come up. One of the and I don't know if I've actually said this, right, but it's definitely been in my mind. I've said how they enable you to avoid cognitive overload, but that's a lot of the motivations. Patterns and pattern for using patterns and pattern languages is to avoid cognitive overload. They are the key to providing the right information at the right time to the right people. This is critical. Otherwise, your alternatives are incomplete or overload. Well, you don't need to have those as options. Being incomplete or overloaded are not the only options. I should put in a little blip from Chicken Run, where the guy says, Mel Gibson's character says, we're either going to succeed or we'll die trying. And one of the chickens says, are those the only options? No, they're not the only options. We settle because we're not attending to people. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. Is this clear? This is where now I'm kind of going. And see, at this point is when I look at team level pattern languages has, I'm still going to say it has 30. I know that list they have is longer, but I'm realizing that's because some of those lines are more like implementations and not the language. And here they are 10 plus 10. Okay. So at this point, let's see if it's this one. Yeah. So we put them here because I'm saying they're a few number. Now I bring this point, this problem in. Okay, so let's go right here, right here. Okay. Okay, so now I'm saying, look, there are just not that many of these. Now what I could say is, in fact, maybe at this point I should say this.
Ah,
A mathematician would say infinite based on the definition that you can always find one more. Okay, so now we hit the punchline. Let me let's see, I split this up. Oh, no, this is right. Okay. So what we have now is we're saying you can get, you can start getting more and more choices and being more and more overwhelmed. Oh, I actually had that down there. Why did I? Oh, I did have that. I just didn't notice I had that. So let me get rid of it here. Okay. I'm going to move this over here. That's why I missed it. I had it in the wrong place. Okay. So come back here. Sorry. Okay, but see now what you're doing is you're navigating by a small number of patterns and the problems being solved, and adding choices make it no more complicated to navigate. This is a key insight. If you have 100 solutions, 100 ways to do the solutions for each pattern, it makes it no more complicated than if you have 10, because you just navigate, you're just at that one place. Now, by the way, I want to be clear the real point of this. There are 2 points. I just realized I have 2 agendas in this session. One agenda is for y'all. Just know how to use the patterns. You don't need to explain this to anybody. You just need to understand how to do this. But I believe there is an argument here that can be made for other people on how to do this. And that's also useful. So we have 2 conversations here. How do I explain this to people I'm doing, or how do I do it myself? And I'm suggesting you don't need to explain this. There are different ways of doing this. One way is just provide a default set to start. This is the Amplio quick start, excuse me, the Scrum quick start with Amplio. I can default to Scrum stuff with the exception of cross-functional teams and flow or one-day time boxing. That's what Sergio and Susan are working on. Or I can create what I want to do. I can talk to the team and give them options. And let's look at the 20 things that are important to us. Or I can just start where I am and adjust. Don't all those work? See, the degree to which you explain this to the people you're working with is up to you. Okay, so let's just pause for questions because I don't think I've been as clear as I was hoping I'd be. So, by the way, a question is if you're wondering and you're trying to figure it out and you're thinking to yourself, maybe it'll come to me later. Later happened. Okay, so now it's present. Oh, now it's later. Tell me what you're not sure about.
So maybe the critical thing here as well is to make sure that you're working with patterns that are really based on first principles or that are really linked to the foundations, the proper
That's right.
foundations, let's say, right?
And that's our job, is to give them those patterns. So as we build them, we have to be careful about it. Now, people can create their own patterns, but the forces in the patterns need to be the issues that are involved. This was the big insight for me when I read the choice. It could be worth, in fact, it could be worth taking this slide. It could be, this would be, again, I could add more understanding here. Let's see where we are. It could be worth adding these slides here. Oh, where's I have a pattern. What a pattern is someplace here. See, here's what we're saying the basis of the patterns are. Let's go through this. Okay, so there are different pieces here. There's the notion of inherent simplicity. Then he's really saying if we dive deep enough that these things are driving everything. And I'm saying we can encapsulate these in terms of a pattern. And what I'm also saying is this.
Hmm.
Inherent simplicity of the physics of flow in our case. Yeah.
I love it. Yes. Yes, that's a better way to say it. Yes. I'm sorry if I've never said this explicitly like this. This has been in my head for a long time. They provide insights into the cause and effect. Now, here's the other thing. You can use factors for effective value streams. And the reason is first principles are abstract to many people, but factors, I need the but, factors for effective value streams ask, what's the word? Pertinent is wrong. Salient, that's maybe just this fuzzy word. Salient questions to help you make decisions. There, I've got to fix that screen, so I still don't have it right, but let me pull up and show you what I mean. Here, I'll put these side by side. Hang on. Okay, let's put these side by side. Doesn't look side by side yet, but it's going to get there. Let me make this bigger. Look at those, and now come down and look at these. The factors for effective quick feedback. You know, we talk about if you get delays in feedback, keep workload within capacity, working beyond capacity, most valuable items, take the subset. These are simply a way to translate this into an actionable decision-making process that we have when I talk about how do you decide what to do. Notice these are also typically the forces to attend to. By the way, that makes me think of something here. So it's a little bit, I'll just mention it. I'll do it later. We do have that lucid board. We have this lucid board that relates to the first principles, which I made some minor adjustment to, and I haven't redone this board. So I'm going to definitely get this board done today because I'm walking over it. So these are not quite the right first principles. So we related to the factors. What we want to recognize is that the first principles basically are somewhat the forces that are present in the patterns. There's a relationship there. I need to make that connection. Okay, let's finish this up. I see we're getting toward the top of the hour. I think I have time. I was almost at the end. So, okay. So we go from here. Let's just go through this as a presentation. We go from here. We talk about Scrum Bond just to make it clear what it is. We reintroduce inherent simplicity. They've seen this, but it's easy to forget what a pattern is. I should have a combination of a pattern language, but you can say what those guys are. And now what we say is that this avoids cognitive overload. We can navigate, and this is the key point, is I can navigate not by this, which overwhelms me, not by this, which underwhelms me, but by the patterns. I think this is a significant, it's profound. This is the combination of Goldratt and Alexander that I've talked about. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of impressed easily. I think this is incredibly profound. This enables you to navigate an infinite amount of information easily, which you didn't have before. And it's based on verifiable theory that most people don't think is true. But you're obviously not convinced yet, so that's okay. So I need to know what you're mulling over. See, because here's the thing. How many times have I said it's not good to have an insight if you can't convey it? This is not on you. This is on me. I'm trying to figure out how to convey this. I can see from the facial expressions, some of you have this, some of you don't have this. Nobody's alone in this. So what are you thinking about? What are you trying to piece together? Ask me that. That's what I need you to tell me. This, by the way, is the last slide, so we've got a few minutes to talk about this.
I think what will help most is when we have some actual defined patterns.
Yeah, but okay, so
examples.
you're right, Susan. Absolutely right. And maybe that's what I need here. I'll tell you why I left it out. But I think I was wrong. I left it out because I'm not actually in this stage trying to apply it outside of ACE. I'm trying to get y'all to understand it. But I think I need an example for y'all as well.
Yes.
Okay, so you're right. You're right.
Because I haven't found any flaws in it, but I'm not sure I could convey it to anybody else.
Because there are no examples. Okay,
Yes.
no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. So good. Well, maybe that'll be what the next session is. Because what tomorrow is about the coaching. I really like this new structure and intend to stick to it. So Thursdays are coaching. So Thursday morning, I'm going to go back and we're going to start going through the coaching materials and conveying. And this is a key one that I tend to forget all the time. Examples are essential. So that's why I say this is on me. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. Well, examples is how a lot of people will mentally
It's the only way.
validate.
Absolutely. And I'm
Because
totally,
without it, it's easy to say, oh, yes, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. That would be a lovely
well,
thing.
let's get a
And
connection.
now I'll go off to something else.
Right. So this will probably be what I'll do next Wednesday. In fact, while I have you, I'll reiterate this because I don't want people to show up and be confused. Is there anything anybody else wants to say while I'm pulling this up? Otherwise, I'm just going to go with the schedule. We still have a few minutes.
I think an example of having more options would be Discipline Agile with their toolkit that has many options, but it's overwhelming.
Yeah, this was something that I noticed right from the beginning, and Scott and I talked about this, and it was always in plan to fix this. but the way to fix it required a integration of taking the toolkit and running it through again the solutions we need, the capabilities we need. It becomes using Amplio's more based on theory than based on a lot of options. And we never got to it for any number of reasons. And I think part of the reason we never got to it as well is I was still hesitant to talk about pattern languages, so I couldn't explain it as well as I can now. So I'm not putting this on Scott or Mark. It was a breakdown of the three of us in some sense.
And
But this is why this is better than DA. As much as I like DA tends to get, you don't know where to find your solutions because it's organized as a bunch of solutions instead of being organized as a bunch of problems you're solving.
yeah, it's good as a reference guide. And
Yeah, it's
but
more of a reference guide. This is more of a problem solving and a reference guide.
and how do we know that the first principles are really first principles, or
Well,
how
you
can
have
we?
to, it's like any theory. You have to find evidence for and then find evidence against. And when you, here, I got to change this. When you find evidence against, then you can do one of two things. Remember, I'm saying first principles of knowledge work for one thing, right? So is there something that's violating the first principle? In other words, is there,
Like
well, hang on
there
a
would be
second.
something that would demonstrate that multitasking is helpful, for instance,
Well,
right? Something.
yeah, you could also talk about seeing multitasking causes delay in workflow, which you could say, well, maybe it doesn't always cause waste. Well, yeah, it doesn't always cause waste. So now you can have a conversation about, well, when does it and when does it not? So I don't defend these as absolutes. And that's why I don't call them laws, because laws are absolutes. But first principle means that it's a more than guidance, but not quite a law. That's where the first principle comes in. Now, actually, this is important. This is a consulting tip here, and you've seen me do this. I don't argue with you when you say things. So you notice that I don't argue with you. I'm not just being magnanimous and nice and, oh man, they'll resist me if I argue them. I don't have any of that. That's bullshit. If you're not candid because you're afraid they'll resist you, then you don't know how to talk to them properly. That's my view. Or you've got the wrong attitude. My attitude is that nothing is absolute and that anyway we communicate in ways, as Bernard Shaw talks about, the challenge with communicate, paraphrasing it a bit, the challenge with communication is the appearance that it has taken place. So when there's some disagreement in absolutism, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's look at that. It's always an exploration to learn more. So yes, this is not absolutely true. I know this is not absolutely true because maybe I put something aside, I come back to it, and there's no loss. Maybe the interruption was short enough where I didn't forget what I was doing. Maybe it didn't matter. I didn't make a mistake. So it didn't matter that I didn't get the feedback sooner. Do you see what I mean? So if what you're trying to do is prove absolutism or trying to prove there is no absolutism, you don't get anywhere. What you want to learn is where do these apply and where do they not apply? These first principles apply pretty much all the places in knowledge work. And that's what I'm going for, not absolutism. But the coaching tip is it's not a debate. This is, in fact, one of the chapters I have. It's not a debate. You're trying to learn. When you debate and you win,
there isn't a winner and a loser.
well, there
As
is actually a winner and a loser, and that's what's weird. The winner is the person who is wrong and learned something, and the
Yes.
loser is the person who's right and didn't learn anything. But you're right. There's no winner and loser. You meant there's no winner and loser in the content. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no winner and loser in the content. You're trying to learn together. And the irony is the loser is the person who didn't learn anything. This is if you take this attitude, it can be very scary at times. I learned this from, I can't remember the guy's name, and I'm not even sure if it was University of Kansas or Kansas State. But I've written this up someplace. I remember it's in the book somewhere. This guy taught people object-oriented programming in a series of 1-hour conversations over a week or two. And the whole time he did it, he never made a statement about what was so. And I was there quietly. I just wanted to see what the guy did. I had no expectation of really learning. I had no expectation at all. The guy was smart. I was clear. And what amazed me was that he had the confidence to just ask questions. And I was like, how the hell does he know he's going to get them to any place that's useful? In fact, how does he know they're not going to go off someplace into a totally disastrous thought process? And I just was, this guy's just courageous or lucky, but I knew he wasn't courageous or lucky. But my model of how to train was those were the only two options. And I mean, I knew he wasn't scared, but I mean, it wasn't courage, it was confidence. So it wasn't courage, it was confidence. So I wondered, what's the confidence? And I realized the confidence was twofold. He was confident that what he thought was correct. And he was also confident that if it was incorrect, he would learn something, and that was useful. So he didn't have to have courage. He was happy no matter what happened. Now, it takes a while to get to that point. I'm not saying I didn't get to this point in a day. It's like, oh, this insight, oh, that's what you do. No. But every time you face the fear of, oh my God, I could be wrong. Oh my God, the students expect me to know more than them. Oh my God, maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm doing. That stuff comes up. It still comes up for me. I don't let it stop me anymore. I wake up most every morning before one of these sessions. I'm telling this as kind of a consulting reality check. I wake up virtually every morning saying I'm supposed to do this, and I have this stupid conversation in my head about they expect this and they expect that, and I have to demonstrate I know something. And then I say, Al, shut the fuck up. Trust yourself. And then I do.
Mm.
But don't think that goes away. It doesn't go away. The realization, the way you deal with it is knowing you have nothing to do with that conversation. That's your reptile brain in a fight or flight making up shit. Does that help that I say that? I mean, you just got to let that go. You got to let go of the judgment. It's just never going to go away. But it gets softer. Eventually it goes away because it gives up knowing you're not going to listen to it. That's how you deal with this. And
I think just to add to that, it's one of the things I've learned since I've been in this class, being able to allow for judgment on some of the things that you are presenting, knowing that you are taking the mindset of you are also learning and you are not
yeah,
absolute about anything. So I think that is a huge thing I have learned in just listening to you and all of that stuff.
good. Thanks. I can't tell you the impact that has on people you talk to because they know at some level part of you is full of shit. Everybody has that. And it's not that it is the case. That's not what bothers people. What bothers people is if you pretend you're not. Because even if you were perfect, then you'd be pissed. They'd be pissed off at you for being so much better than them because people don't like that. But the reality is we all have it to some extent. So I would rather deal with somebody who's totally open, is totally out there saying what they're saying, but is totally uncommitted to it. You would too, right? I mean, just think about it. Don't you like talking to people like that more than a smart guy who knows they're smarter than you? I learned this from Jerry Weinberg in Secrets of Consulting. He talks about this, not quite the way I'm talking about it, but that's where I learned it. It's being authentic, telling it the way it is the best consulting thing you can do. And sometimes it's terrifying. But you know what? I can't ever recall it costing me anything. I'm not saying it wouldn't have gotten me thrown out of a client if I mean, there were sometimes I wasn't as authentic as I might have been. I mean, I was not as clear about what could happen, and maybe I didn't speak it. And maybe it would have gotten me thrown out, but I wasn't going to get much done anyway. And then I remember Chet Holmes' thing: don't try to sell a meteor to a dinosaur. It wastes your time and irritates the dinosaur. So whatever you're covering up, if in fact they would throw you out, you're not going to be effective anyway. And that takes courage, especially in this market. My suggestion, though, is this is what I'll close things on, because I'm going to start promoting this. My suggestion is people need to know how to go from here, how to go from this downward cycle how to go from this downward cycle to this upward cycle. And this is different.
Yes.
And if you're not willing to be different, then expect to get fired with the masses. Because we are seeing that this doesn't work. This doesn't mean Agile's dead. Doesn't even mean Scrum is bad. You can go from here to here. You can take Scrum. You don't have to abandon. That'd be insane. Just add the physics of flow to Scrum and you'll get this. You won't be doing Scrum anymore, but I don't care about that. And nobody cares about that except the Scrum aficionados. Managers don't care. They might care about the certification, but once you're in it, they just want effective. And there's this whole group of people that are starting to abandon well-defined processes, and some of them want to grow their own. Anyway, any closing statement? We've gone a little over, but
No, I think it's good. I like this picture a lot. Saw it yesterday on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna really be content. And I keep changing it a little bit, but I think and you should look in the foundations if you want. I expanded this. Like I said, I'm not going to re-record it, but I go in and I expand it. See, the recordings, I'm fine. I'm fine if you want to do a recording, but the real intention of the recordings are for you to know how to state this stuff. So they're not necessarily public. I'm not saying don't show them to the public. I'm showing them to the public. But I added some stuff. You can see there's more blue here about these points than I had before. Okay. And then this is the point I remember Susan made. The focus is on the framework here. The focus is on the work. This is important. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to get this up. Tomorrow I'm going to do coaching. I'm sorry. Yes, Susan.
I just wanted to say that I think this diagram in particular would appeal on the enterprise level.
Good point. Good point. In fact, I'm wondering if well, I'm about to get into more of the enterprise stuff. Remember the 3 tracks. We have, in a sense, you could say Mondays are enterprise, Tuesdays are Amplify Foundations team level. And today was just, this to me is part of that foundations track. And Thursdays are coaching. So we're going to get, I'm trying to follow that. Okay. Yeah, very good. It might change a little bit at the enterprise.
Yeah.
In fact, that would be interesting to think about it that way. Anyway, good session. Always give me feedback offline too on things, but I like the way this is going. I'm not trying to build these and then present them, but I want to end up with something that you can use as PowerPoints later. Okay. Okay. Talk to you later. Good. Thanks for the feedback.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al.
Bye.
Thank you.